Ben Wheatley is a name that I am semi-familiar with. I have seen it mentioned through various threads thanks to different accounts I follow on Twitter, and yet despite this, I have not seen any of his work yet. The poster for In the Earth and its still image of a long-haired axe-wielding man backlit by blinding light popped up more times than I could count, and I guess that was a cue to pique my interest. The film was getting considerable amount of praise through the indie circuits, while mainstream audiences were announcing their distaste for it, a combination I tend to like the most out of the films I enjoy. Anything that's getting enough praise for being unique enough to alienate and even piss off the people whose favorite movies are directed by people they can't name is ideal for my tastes, so I gave it a watch. And I could honestly say that I liked this film, but describing why and even recommending it to people will be quite a task. It's not a film with a conventional plot per se, but one that will most likely see more than a handful of discussions theorizing its ending and what exactly happened during its runtime. They'll pop up on YouTube and Reddit for sure. In the Earth has a feeling of a film that was built upon an already vague outline, one that's reminiscent of high schoolers shooting a bunch of footage with their friends and hoping that editing it together somehow manages to form a narrative. And while the narrative is almost not there, it's anything but amateurish. The film follows a scientist named Martin as he arrives at a government-controlled outpost to meet with a Dr. Wendell, who's studying mycorrhiza, the symbiotic association between plants and fungi, in the hopes of utilizing this to increase crop growth. And while at the outpost station, he comes across illustrations of a local legend surrounding a woodland spirit named Parnag Feg. He also meets his park guide, Alma, who is taking him on his multi-day hike to Dr. Wendell's campsite. Almost immediately, things do not go well for these two as they begin their trek. The first night, both are beaten unconscious whilst in their tents and robbed of their possessions. The next morning, Martin steps on a sharp stone, one that was seen during the opening credits, and cuts open his foot. Their travels do not get any better from here on out, but they soldier on. Ben Wheatley hired Nick Gillespie to helm cinematography, and his work is easily one of the strongest elements In the Earth has going for it. Scene composition is well framed, and all of the outside imagery is gorgeous to watch, and occasionally it's marred by some shaky footage, but overall it's beautifully shot and it's a beautifully photographed film, especially in the third act when all hell begins to break loose and things become an incoherent mess. The frame takes on the feel of a kaleidoscopic nightmare of dread as intense images begin to twist and turn, multiplying and blending with colors and images of nature, the main theme of the story, and it looks spectacular. If I had to compare it to another film, I would have to say In the Earth would pair wonderfully with Lucas Feikefeld's Hagazusa, a film that I both loved and highly recommend. Another aspect I absolutely loved was the film's soundtrack, composed by Clint Mansell. It features heavy synth soundscapes, which helps form the atmosphere into this looming, almost apocalyptic unease that follows the characters as they travel through the forest. It never lets up, and neither does the characters' feelings of apprehension, that they've just entered into something terrifying and now are entirely out of their element. Ben Wheatley has also said that the soundtrack was partially composed using plants, I suppose akin to how Dr. Wendell in the film is using light and air bouncing off trees to create a frequency that the nature around her campsite can hear. So too can these trees produce sound that isn't able to be picked up by human ears. If this fascinates you, I would recommend an album called Years by Austrian artist Bartholomew Traubeck, who took a specially built record player that analyzed both the texture and the hue of 7 different types of trees and attached each of these with separate notes on a piano. The result is nothing shy of brilliant. Clint Mansell's score and composition was a fantastic aspect to the film. As the visuals begin to become more ghoulish and disconnected, the harsher synth pads come out. It creates this great, intense atmosphere that's almost combative. Seriously, the score is awesome, and I think along with Jim Williams' composition for Brendan Cronenberg's Possessor, this might be one of my favorite soundtracks to come out in recent years. In the Earth's biggest flaw is the lack of explanation. Granted, it's not trying to tell you everything that's happening, but for audience members who aren't paying attention, a lot of this film will go completely over their heads, and even if they are attentive to some degree, it still leaves a lot unexplained. Since the film started started and finished production during a quarantine lockdown in the UK, both the dialogue and the opening scenes were very real. Tertiary characters establish that a deadly virus has swept through the world and everybody is visibly apprehensive against seeing other people that they're unfamiliar with. There's that anxiety, something that most audience members can connect with. While trekking through the woods, Martin and his guide Alma come across a man who's supposedly been living in nature, and despite their clear wariness, they make small talk and follow him to his makeshift camp, a decision that they soon will find out will derail their entire venture into the woods. From here on out, there will be some spoilers, so if you're interested in seeing this film, which I think you should, jump to the timestamp on screen to avoid these. There's your warning. 3, 2, 1, and moving on. Earlier in the review, I mentioned a local legend within the film named Parnag Feg, who is said to be the spirit of the woods. The man whom Martin and Alma meet living in the woods also mentions this, believing to have communicated with her. However, as the pair escapes being murdered, they finally reach Dr. Wendell's camp, and it is revealed that not only is the man living in the woods her ex-husband, Zach, but also at some point before the events of the film, Martin and her were lovers. There's speculation that due to the richness of the soil, Dr. Wendell believes that all nature is somehow connected via some form of network, the previously mentioned mycorrhiza, and that it all communicates with itself, and in some vague way, us as well. Zach believes that Alma and Martin, among others who have stumbled into his camp, like flies to a spider's web, were called to the forest by Parnag Feg, a fact that's not so concrete thanks to Ben Wheatley's decision to not share all the information at once. At certain points in the film, it feels like the people stuck in the forest are contending with a woodland boogeyman who has brought them there for sacrifice. This isn't entirely true, as there's enough speculation to put some pieces together ourselves. In the first 15 minutes of the film, Martin notices a drawing on the wall of a supposed Parnag Feg, and even finds drawings of children's interpretations of her, showing us that this is not only a local legend, but something that almost everybody knows about already. Alma says, "The forest is something that you can sense, so why not give that feeling a face?" This doesn't give us proof that the creature is real, but it's used as a cautionary warning since a handful of children went missing in the 70s, so they use this legend as a way of keeping kids in line. It's deceptive, but it's effective. We also see that the spores among Dr. Wendell's campsite are hallucinogenic in nature. When Alma tries to travel through a thick morning fog in a hazmat suit, which does very little to prevent her from breathing them in, she is pulled out of the fog in a state of hysteria, which gives more credence to the theory that it might just be nature that's causing this, and since Parnag Feg is a shared and well-known icon, it can be assumed that the victims are just hallucinating the visualization of her, and there is no greater evil force out there. I genuinely like this idea because it's a conclusion that audience members who are paying attention can piece together themselves, but it's also not entirely concrete to be proven true, so more speculation and theorizing can happen. And I like that only Ben Wheatley knows what's actually happening out there in the woods. After all that said and done, I think In the Earth is a movie for a certain niche audience. It's a competently made film and boasts equally beautiful cinematography and a wonderful score, but it leaves enough ambiguity to live rent-free in your head after having seen it. However, due to the low audience scores, In the Earth is no doubt an experience that will not entertain most moviegoers who prefer movies via the pipeline of The Conjuring and Annabelle films, which require considerably less attention. Not to dismiss the Conjuring films or fans, but if you like a movie with frequent boo scenes and a visible monster, you should look somewhere else, as this is not one for you. Thank you for watching this review. I hope you found it informative. I hope to do more in the future. If you've seen the movie and you liked it, leave a comment below if you want. Like or dislike, doesn't matter. I don't measure success based on whether you liked something. Do whatever you want, I don't care.